All right, good afternoon, everyone. The meeting of the Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025.
Errol Southers has a huge record of all kinds of really messed up shit. And I've seen him on the police commission. I go to those meetings almost every week as well. And what I see at police commission is that Errol Southers is not holding them accountable. He's actually trying to repress the ability of the public to actually say anything about the police and everything. And it's just, we go every week, most inconvenient time possible, the police headquarters, surrounded by cops. And we see all this corruption. For the last 2 months, Errol has been illegally serving on the commission despite his term expiring at the end of June. But he's been continuing to show up despite the fact that, as far as I can tell, we're having the committee hearing now on his nomination. But what we're seeing is that every week he's continuing to serve. He has to be reappointed by city council before he can continue serving. But yet, as of last week, they reappointed him as vice president, elected him that. His term as president expired, of course, so they just made him vice president, even though his term expired at the end of June, so he couldn't legally serve in the first place. Because as far as I can tell, once your term expires, if city council hasn't reconfirmed you yet, you don't go to the meetings, you don't vote, you don't run the meetings. But that's what Errol Southers has been doing for the last, 2 months now? 3 months, whatever it is. Since the beginning of July. And what we're seeing, and Errol Southers has a history of repressing speech at USC, of putting money towards creating things that lead to, we can't even, they'll all talk about this fucker.
Very good. So let's see here. Number 4, let's talk about the largest dirtbag ever, Dr. Errol Southers. A no-good criminal tyrant running the police commission into the ground. Racist. Doesn't like free speech. Turns the camera away from people that speak. Acts like an authoritarian dictator. Every time you go to his meeting, he stops and says, "Okay, this is your first and only warning." Just like that. Threatening, menacing, total complete douchebag of the worst kind. And he upheld himself after June 30th. Did you know, Tracy Park, that he was voting on motions when there was a minimum quorum of 3 after his term expired? Did you know that, Buckethead? And you see, that means his votes were void ab initio. So see, he's a criminal. He's no good. He's a piece of shit. So let's say no to Dr. Evil Errol Southers, the fucking scumbag.
So we have another asshole on record here, Dr. Rollhead Southers, a racist, prejudiced, white motherfucker too. Just like the rest of you in here with me too. And the reason why is because in my hands, I have what they call a declaration of what David O. Carter says about mental health. That Southers is full of shit. He doesn't help anyone in the meetings. He suppresses speech. He goes against the First Amendment, 14th Amendment, and my right to say Brandenburg versus Ohio, U.S. Why is that? Why is 395 U.S. 444 1969 so offensive to E. Roy? Because E. Roy don't know shit about the First Amendment.
So Errol Southers has no business being reappointed to the LAPD commission. No business. None at all. A few years ago, the police chief of the LAPD got us caught up in a lawsuit. We lost $4 million because he refused to address and covered up sexual harassment. Then the city appealed it, spent $2 million on outside attorneys to represent the city. And then we had to pay another $1 million to cover Captain Carranza, or now Commander Carranza's legal fees. And then we're paying interest on the judgment. So we paid over $7 million because of that sexual harassment cover-up. I filed a complaint against the chief on that. And the LAPD commission, under Errol Southers, said he did nothing wrong. That when he went on the stand and said that he refused to address the sexual harassment, he said he did it because he didn't want it going viral. He was protecting the department over his own officers. And you wonder why. You know, 52% of the population are women, but only 18% of the LAPD are. Why? Why? Because the environment is toxic. So when we have Errol Southers, who did nothing to hold the last chief accountable for that, then he needs to be held accountable. And over the last few weeks, I have watched protesters and press get violated by the LAPD, and he said nothing. And then the press club, LA Press Club, went and got a restraining order against the LAPD, and he said nothing. And then they violated the restraining order, and he said nothing. And you know who else said
Sir,
nothing?
there's no
Public
reason to
comment.
yell.
Public comment. You know who else said nothing? None of you people. None of you people said anything as the LAPD has violated the restraining order.
Sir, I'm going to
You
warn
said
you
nothing.
again to just keep your voice
I
down.
will
You can tell us
respond
that.
how I want to. Now, you see that guy right there, Current Price? Why don't you regulate that guy? See that guy right there? This is a public safety meeting. You guys oversee the LAPD, but that guy right there is out on bail for 12 felony charges. And you have him sitting on here? How dare you people? Hugo, when he came in, you gave him a fist bump. I saw that. As he's waiting those charges, so you're on his side then, huh? You side with Current Price? How can any of you want to be seen with them? You have no business being up here. And you know what? Your wife needs to be indicted too. Enjoy your day.
Errol Southers, perhaps known best for arresting 93 college students for existing on their own campus or for serving as president on the Board of Police Commissioners, is about to serve yet another term on the board. A rubber stamp body that, in my time alive, I've only ever seen write some after-action reports or give oral presentations on Tuesday mornings about how the police murdered someone and they're looking at it. Southers built an academic career as a, quote, expert in terrorism and, quote, Israeli counterterrorism strategies. He has spent decades teaching at the International Institute of Counterterrorism, and that is something that Errol is proud of. He claims Zionist Israeli tactics and strategies with glee. Well, the reality of these tactics and strategies is that the Zionist entity has cut off all food and aid from Gaza. The people of Gaza are experiencing level 5 catastrophic famine, and this isn't about crop failure or drought. That is the Israeli counterterrorism strategies that Errol is so proud of being a champion of. Now, all of this that I'm about to say is a summarized version of your own city documents that state city officials shall not share information, city resources, or city personnel with ICE or immigration enforcement. In fact, you claim that the reason that LA is a sanctuary city is because you don't share information, personnel, or city resources. But what about the city personnel you continue to share with DHS via Errol Southers? In addition to sending city pigs to immigration raids and automatic license plate reader data to ICE, you have the president of your Board of Police Commissioners meeting serving as the former director of CREATE, a Department of Homeland Security research hub hosted by USC. This quite literally means that Southers is a lifelong cop for LAPD, the FBI, and no surprise, ICE. And it should be no surprise at all that because Southers has been acting like an ICE agent for fucking months. Across the street at LAPD headquarters, he has not given a single fuck. In fact, he's had straight glee for the fact that ICE has been abducting our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, and our fathers, and Errol greenlights it all. He's even admitted that LAPD aids ICE because there is no differentiation between LAPD and ICE, and Errol is the perfect exemplary instance of ICE and LAPD being one and the same, encapsulated in his little fucking body. And none of this is to mention his continued greenlighting with your aid for real-time crime centers, which allows LAPD to watch residents of Los Angeles in real time all the time, so that Errol can spy on the children of USC in real time all the time, and he can track our neighbors' license plates and share that information with ICE so that you can streamline this city's ability to aid immigration enforcement, to hunt, stalk, surveil, and kill. If you all approve Errol Southers for the Board of Police Commissioners, you're greenlighting the tactics Errol loves, of starving Palestinian children and tearing mothers in Los Angeles from their babies, police. You're approving the children that were chained down the street in ISIS parking garage. It will be you who is complicit in the rampant anti-Muslim racism that Southers perpetuates daily and the rampant and continued abduction of our community members. Fuck Errol Southers.
I'm commenting to protest the reappointment of Errol Southers, as many in this room and outside this room who can't make this ridiculously inaccessible meeting. There's absolutely no confidence that this city can make any meaningful changes, especially when at every opportunity you make the same ridiculous decisions. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results, but maybe you're actually accepting the same results. Murder and corruption continuously. We have lawsuit after lawsuit against the police that is bankrupting and defunding our city. No changes made. Fucking ridiculous. We have one of the most murderous police departments in the country, beat out only by LA Sheriff's Department, and we think that means nothing should be done and people should be rewarded with jobs and power. Why does he get to be president of the police commission with so many conflicts of interest in police positions? This is basic ethics. Do something different. Errol Southers must go. I yield my time. Defund the fucking police.
So Errol Southers, in his scholarship and is a documented anti-Muslim racist. So first of all, if you approve his reappointment, then you will be complicit. You will be complicit in anti-Muslim bias and bigotry. I mean, let's look at a couple things. Of course, Southers was responsible for the USC's shameful decision to cancel commencement address of USC's 2024 valedictorian, Asnat Abbasam, a Muslim. Then, he promoting his anti-Muslim racism and demonizing criticism of Israel. He teaches at the International Institute of Counterterrorism in Israel and is the architect of a youth criminalization strategy called homegrown violent extremism. It's the central tenet of HVE doctrine is the need to profile Muslim Americans' youth as security risks on the basis of factors like their religious piety, critiques of U.S. foreign policy, and affinity to other Muslims. Let's look at a couple other things. In 2017, Southers testified to the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Homeland Security, and he said, and I quote, "An American who embraces a Muslim identity ideology within the U.S. is a homegrown violent extremist." Let's look at something else. Another article co-authored by Southers and published by USC CREATE, which is Center for Risk and Economic Analysis of Threats and Emergencies, under his directorship, the article lists radicalization characteristics that include about Muslims, pervasive frustration or anger towards the U.S., strongly identified with Muslims perceived as being victimized, Palestinians, Iraqis, Afghanis, or Muslim Kashmiris, adopting dress, grooming, or conduct increasingly indicative of Muslim identity, paid off debts, observed dietary laws, Muslim women donned full covering and all of that, converted to Islam as an adult, and even simply comes from a Muslim immigrant community. So that's his record, that's his scholarship, that's his work, that's his leadership, that's the fuckery that he engages in every day, and that's how he is constantly. So it is on your head to reject him. Otherwise, you're complicit, absolutely, in anti-Muslim bias and racism.
I want to say that, no, you should not reappoint Mr. Southers if he's part of this whole suppression of the students who are pro-Palestine. If he's part of that culture, I'm amazed. When I taught at UCLA as a lecturer in '92, the Chicano students put up tents. We were pushing for a Chicano Studies department. The police never did anything like that to us. So why did you guys do what you did at UCLA? And Mr. Southers apparently was part of the USC. No way, not good. Not good at all. And I went to UC Santa Cruz 72. No, the police never treated us like that. And in 72, we had our opinions. The commission, I'm at general comments, good. The police commission, I started going after the No Kings March. Do you remember that? It's a Saturday, the No Kings March. No, you don't remember? I think you had already set up the curfew, and I started to go to the commission. Mr. Southers was hiding behind his computer. I couldn't see him, and he tells us, "You cannot stand at our meetings. You must sit down." And I was sitting there, I couldn't even see him because that commission is out of control. No one has control of it. There's issues that I'm trying to get answered. Nothing. La Senora Sanchez Gordon is trying to get the commission to tell her what happened at that No Kings March. Give me a report. Why did you guys launch bazookas at the youth right there in front of the Hall of Justice? Your sheriffs were launching and having fun with these
Thank you,
bazookas.
Speaker.
There has been an ongoing problem with police flat out refusing to do their jobs. They are refusing to make required records and they are refusing to do serious investigations. The situation is so obviously dire that it demands the highest level of oversight, which is to ask the governor to send investigators from the National Guard. Like many others, Commissioner Suthers has failed to request this oversight, and for that reason, his application should be rejected. Now, this might sound like name calling, but it's not. Logically, there are only two possible reasons for his failure to make this request. First, he might be a truly horrific human being, but I don't believe he is. The only other possible reason is that he is under duress, and that is what I believe. It's unacceptable for public officials to be under duress, but peace officers are not equipped to make this determination, and certainly this committee is not. There are no other possible reasons for failing to request this highest level of oversight. Officers may not dismiss any allegation as frivolous. That is the job of the jury. Anyone who says officers may do this is betraying the public.
In Errol Souther's book, Homegrown Violent Extremism, he says that Muslim identity, simply having a Muslim identity, is cause to classify someone an extremist. In a report, in a paper that he co-authored, Suthers classifies signs of Muslimness and identification with Palestinians as potential characteristics for homegrown violent extremism. This is the man that you all will decide on becoming the president or continuing as the president of the LA Police Commission. A man who has spent his entire life as a law enforcement officer involved with Santa Monica Police and the FBI. How can someone who is involved with law enforcement their entire career, who has these kind of views against Muslim people, be the president of a commission that's supposed to be civilian-led and unbiased? This man has spent his career spreading Islamophobia and fear about Muslim people his entire career. And he has done so openly. It was a mistake to allow him on the commission in the first place. It was a mistake to put him as president in the first place. You all have the chance to rewrite that mistake. You all have the chance to put trust back in the commission, because that is supposed to be the civilians' last line of defense to hold police accountable. It shouldn't be ran by an Islamophobic, pro-cop president. Block Southern.
As a Muslim woman and a local organizer, I walk around with more paranoia and fear organizing here in Los Angeles for pro-Palestinian causes than I ever did working in Afghanistan, organizing for women who were at risk there. And with the personal views of Commissioner Suthers, there's no surprise why that is. Under Suthers, Los Angeles faces a $1 billion deficit. A majority of those lawsuits are against LAPD and for the excessive use of force. Under Suthers, during Trump's attempted military occupation of our city, LAPD has worked with ICE despite being a sanctuary city. Under Suthers, for 4 hours, UCLA students were under attack while Zionists recreated the same torture tactics Israeli military uses on Palestinians on Los Angeles college students. LAPD stood by and then moved in the next night to attack the students that were attacked, who originally attacked the pro-Palestinian students. Suthers has not only failed Los Angeles, but he has humiliated us again and again. And as Southers and city officials ignore constituents' needs and welcome the World Cup and Olympics, I can promise you placing a white supremacist like Southers at the helm of the LAPD will not keep the city in order. The people of Los Angeles have shown you repeatedly, and especially this last 2 months, that we will not respond to the militarization of our city and police force to keep us in line while our city officials continue their corruption and abuse of Black and brown lives on our streets. Replace Southers or condemn the people of Los Angeles to many, many more dark days ahead.
Yes, I urge you to please show that you have listened to all of the comments, that you know in your hearts that Errol Southers is a racist and corrupt person, and that you don't want him on the police commission anymore. Errol Southers hates being held accountable for overstaying his term, for sexual harassment, for any charges that, about his being anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian. He hates anyone who wants to call the police into accountability for all of their use of force, and he hates the First Amendment. He hates children. I don't even know where to go. What he loves is arbitrary rules, that he can just sit up there and say, okay, you get 1 warning, then you're out. No, you get 2 warnings and you get to sit. Oh no, we're limiting it to 30 minutes. No, we're limiting it to 15 minutes. He just goes with his mood, He's gotten, as much as he loves rules, which is the number one thing he loves, he's gotten people detained because they didn't follow those arbitrary rules. He's gotten people detained because they brought children. He's had people detained for talking too much, overstaying the amount of time they were given. But he doesn't follow the rules. As I said, he feels he's immune to all those rules. And I object to his being president or part of, in any way, the police commission.
Thank you, Speaker.
I'm here as a professor of Pan-African Studies. I'm here as an organizer with Black Lives Matter Grassroots. And I'm here as a Black Muslim woman who feels under great threat by Errol Southers. Errol Southers, who identifies not just me, but everyone who is Black and Muslim, who is Black and relatively conscious, as a potential extremist, who has exacted violence on students and faculty and community members for daring to stand up for the people who are being genocided in Palestine, who has gone so far as to call police in at USC, who has gone so far as to cancel the valedictorian speaker just because she was Muslim, and then go on when students protested to say all of the graduation will be canceled. Errol Southers, who from his chair on the dais of the LA Police Commission continues to threaten those who give up their time to come in the middle of the day to say that we have to keep our communities safe by holding police accountable. And LAPD, which is not only costing the city billions of dollars every year in violence and violent attacks on its residents, but also an LAPD that has killed more people than any other law enforcement unit in the country, with 30 shootings so far this year, and Errol Southers refuses to hold them accountable. Rather than doing his job as supposed to be the civilian police commissioner, he kisses up to LAPD, putting items on his Instagram page that show that he's a fan of LAPD. We don't need any fans and any stands. We need people on the police commission who are courageous enough to hold the police accountable and stand for the people of the city. So we're asking you to vote no on the reappointment of Errol Southers.
The fact that Errol Southers is even being considered is wild. A man who is so controversial that a petition to remove him from police commission currently has 2,000 signatures and growing. So count them in the voices of people who are saying block Southers. While President, police shootings have increased, none of whom have been held accountable, 30 so far this year, and the payouts for murders by police have increased. All while he harasses and surveils students, preventing the valedictorian from being able to speak at her graduation and sending LAPD to brutalize and arrest USC students. He should have never been appointed in the first fucking place. He has proved himself to be exactly what his record and history informed us he would be. Shocking. Now that you have even more proof that he is in fact a racist, Islamophobic, and a fascist, yes, a fascist, because he threatened a black father who had his child with him, saying he would call DCFS on him merely for speaking out against LAPD. You know, the body that he's supposed to actually be the oversight for? Now that he has cost the city millions of dollars and done irreparable harm to those who were arrested and brutalized by LAPD and their surviving families, now is the time to block his appointment and allow for someone to be seated who is actually capable of holding the police accountable, as opposed to having trophies and memorabilia of the LAPD sitting in his office. He literally has an LAPD helicopter like mock-up sitting in his office. And this is the person who you think is capable of holding them accountable. In case I didn't make it crystal clear, block Southers.
Item 4 is consideration of mayor report relative to the reappointment of Dr. Errol Southers to the Board of Police Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2030.
All right. Is Mr. Southers here? I believe he's. All right. Can we please not disturb the meeting? If you disturb the meeting, I'm going to ask you to leave, or I'm going to, if you're on the first warning and then the second warning, I'm going to ask you to be removed from this. So, Dr. Southers, thank you so much for being here. Officers, can you identify who that person is? If you can identify those people, you've been warned. Now, any other further outbreak to disrupt this meeting, you will be removed, pursuant to item 7 and 12. Commissioner Southers.
Mr. Chair, members of the council who are members of the Public Safety Committee, thank you for having me this afternoon.
Yeah, speak a little bit closer to the mic. I apologize. Yes.
Is that better? Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry. Mr. Chair and council members who are part of the Public Safety Committee, thank you for having me this afternoon.
I'm sorry, Ms. Southers. You standing up, if you can just sit down because you're blocking the view of some of the other members. That is considered disrupting this meeting. If you can do so. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Ms. Southers, I was distracted. Can you please say the last?
Again, just Mr. Chair and council members of the Public Safety Committee, I just want to thank you for the honor of having me this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Ms. Southers, for being here. You know, I have some questions, and I think my colleagues do too, you know, obviously regarding your reappointment to this. So, you know, on your time on the board, what specific sort of oversight actions or policy changes do you believe have most improved LAPD's accountability?
Well, the first one I would speak to is the ABLE program, which is the active bystandership for law enforcement, which my predecessor, President William Briggs, brought into policy. And the whole purpose of that project was to reduce mistakes, prevent misconduct, and promote health and wellness amongst the officers in the department. The other thing that we've moved into and pushed since I've been there are the de-escalation during use of force incidents. I can tell you that in closed session, when we adjudicate categorical uses of force, those are things that we examine quite closely, along with the Force Investigation Division. We have also worked very closely with a recently adopted drone policy. And in the development of that policy, there was strict attention paid to First Amendment activities that might occur, as well as the efficiency of police response and officer safety. Those would be the top three, although I would say that for the first time since I've been a commissioner, we've had several meetings where there were no closed items for categorical uses of force because the schedule has been quite efficient. We've been able to move rather expeditiously and been on on time with regards to getting things to the commission for adjudication much faster than when I first arrived.
Thank you. So how do you balance the board's duty as a civilian oversight committee with LAPD's sort of leadership operational independence?
That's challenging due to my background, where I have specific knowledge about certain activities, having performed those duties as an officer myself. So I've personally leaned in, but at the same time, I've wanted to share opinions in a way that didn't diminish or compromise the autonomy of those units within the department that are responsible for that. And so I've worked with the working groups and the affected command personnel that have oversight for those projects and those programs in developing the policies. Specifically, we worked on a K-9 policy that's now been up to speed. It had been out of compliance for about several years, and we had to look at bringing it up to speed. I have a lot of knowledge with K-9s, and so we were able to work on that. And then also, again, the drone policy. We paid strict attention to some items there that could have been problematic. We did a comparative analysis of most of the agencies in Southern California that have drones already that influenced our policy making. But again, there were several iterations of that draft that went back and forth between the commission and the department to come up with what we have now, which we believe is a working policy that will ensure that we have First Amendment rights that are intact, as well as being able to operate efficiently in response to calls for service.
So, Dr. Sanders, when you were first appointed to the board, and I have it here, you stated your vision for the LAPD to be centered on a whole of community approach to public safety, emphasizing community engagement, data-driven strategies, and a focus on community partnership and addressing root causes of crime. You also said that the vision involves enhancing transparency, accountability, and proper training to build trust, with a particular focus on positive youth interactions and understanding community needs to achieve more effective public safety. Can you talk about those things and what you see for the future if you are reappointed by this commission and council?
Well, most importantly, again, I've been able to go out and have meetings. I've met with all of you. I've had meetings in a number of the council districts. I've been heavily involved in the recruitment. As you know, the attrition in the Los Angeles Police Department is outpacing our hiring. We had an almost monthly hiring mixer at the Amundsen Recruit Training Center in Westchester. I attended almost all of those over the last 2.5 years. And each time when I'd go there Saturday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, there'd be more than 100 people from across the country who want to be LAPD officers. We don't have a recruitment problem. We don't have a marketing problem. We do have a hiring problem. I spend quite a bit of time with youth groups and community groups, and especially those out of the Community Safety Partnership. As a result of that, I've been able to connect with the young people in those areas, with their parents. Just this past week, I had 2 young men who want to be business and finance majors as a result of the Project Blue project that's run by LAPD. I've worked with faith-based groups. I had more very successful meetings both at the mosque and the synagogues in the area over the past 2.5 years. CPAB meetings across the entire department, as well as meeting with the department affinity groups. And so that has been quite productive as it relates to being able to, again, look at a whole of community approach to this. I've tried to balance my time in the community, my time in the department, both with the sworn and civilian personnel, in getting that done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've talked about police hiring and not being able to hire to attrition. We've talked about police hiring and not being able to hire to attrition. So I think that should be a big focus of ours to make sure. I believe we've hopefully identified some of the issues in the personnel department, and now it's time for us to address those needs so we can actually get, that qualified candidates aren't waiting. It's a seller's market out there. Every law enforcement agency is hiring, and we want to make sure that obviously we know that people want to be LAPD officers over other departments, and it's just our job to be able to offer those jobs as soon as that opportunity, as soon as possible, and not make them wait, because if they have to wait, they're going to choose other departments.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So how do you how will you ensure that this board moving forward remains in a more proactive than reactive sort of position?
Well, as some examples, we're trying to increase our analysis and response. So just last week at commission meeting, I've asked for an update. As was mentioned previously, there has been an increase in officer-involved shootings. The chief is going to come back with a report that's going to talk about why that's happening and what steps are being taken to address it. We have called in front of the commission at least 2 times since I've been a commissioner the alternatives to armed response programs for reports. And each time they come before us, we emphasize and want to hear what are the patrol officer hours saved as a result of these efforts. So they'll be coming before us again. The ABLE program, which I mentioned previously, is going to come before us again in the next month. And last but not least, the chief has a plan to reorganize the public engagement group as well as the community relations section. So unfortunately, when I was out in West Bureau last week, there's the impression that they're going to lose their senior lead officers, and that's not going to happen. So the chief is going to come to the board meeting and present on those 2 issues with regards to how the department's been reorganized and what that's going to mean, and more importantly, what kind of impact, if any, it's going to have on those senior lead officers in their relationship with the communities that they serve.
Well, senior lead officers, I think I can speak for everyone. I mean, they play an important role in our communities and working with the communities and our offices. So any attention to that to make sure that those positions are filled and those positions are kept as a sort of important part of LAPD is greatly appreciated. So personally, just want to thank you for your service these past years. And colleagues, I'd like to open it up to Councilmember Price.
For your service and willingness to serve. You've got an interesting background, of course, being ex-cop, a deputy chief, certainly in academia. But can you help us kind of focus in the last couple of years in your service on the board? Anything specifically you've done in terms of encouraging more accountability, more transparency, that's really made a difference in the board and how we operate?
Mr. Chair, is it all right if I speak instead of these folks?
All right. Apologize, Mr. Southers. Dr. Southers, I didn't hear the interruption. I'll try to pay more attention to that. Officers, if you can help me identify people who are interrupting this meeting, bring it to my attention so we can ask them excuse from this meeting. Continue.
Thank you. Again, the de-escalation of force. So we've had a number of incidents where we've had an edged weapon by the person that's been, the call for service has engaged, and it's involved and resulted in an officer-involved shooting. We've gone through the escalation to see were verbal commands enough, was chemical agents an option, were the use of least lethal munitions an option. Why did it result in a shooting? Is there something else we could have done better? Should we have waited? So those are the kinds of things that I've really emphasized in regards to the adjudication of these matters. Body-worn video activation. We have made sure that body-worn video activation is happening. It wasn't happening as often as it should have before, and now we're looking at the time that any delays might happen. We have every single body-worn that's out there, and so we'll know. And most importantly, again, the oncoming report the chief is going to give us with regards to why officer-involved shootings are happening. So those are things that I really leaned in as it relates to the policy, but most also just recruitment. Recruitment was something that I mentioned when I came in front of you 2.5 years ago. It's gotten more dire as it relates to academy classes. Last week, I believe we graduated a class of 16, and that's unprecedented. And so we are far behind. Attrition is really going to be challenging going forward as we look at things like the World Cup and LA 28, the Super Bowl, and other events. So those are things that have required my attention, as well as even the facilities and the fleet that our officers have to work in and drive. There are some facilities that need dire attention, and I think we say a lot about our officers when we put them in conditions that suggest that they don't matter as much as we say. So those are things that I've leaned in on since I've been there.
Have you been able to offer any new process or procedures in terms of meetings or how the board is conducting its business that encourages greater confidence, greater transparency, greater understanding of the process?
We did have an idea to go out to the community every quarter. We had 2 attempts. We went to South Bureau, then we went on to Mission Bureau, And we had some challenges. And we had a number of people who contacted us afterward to say that they actually felt unsafe because of the behavior that was there. So we suspended that. We're now just last week started a new series of conversations with the commissioner. We're going to go out to every bureau every 2 months. The bureau chief invites those folks. We were in West Bureau last week. It was very successful. We were able to have some conversations, and what came out of that were some criticisms, as well as a number of people saying, how can we help you recruit? How can we help people get the right information with regards to who to call if there's a call for service? And a clarification on some of the things that we were doing, particularly as it related to technology.
Well, I don't think we can focus on that too much. That seems to be the number one concern raised by folks is transparency and inability to understand what the process is going to be, some certainty. And so anything we can do to help allay those fears, concerns, and improve the level of communication, I think is going to be important. And I think it will be important for you as you serve another term as well.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any other questions? Councilmember Soto-Martinez.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much.
You threatening me?
Oh, jeez.
I'm not going to stand here and have you say that.
Apologize, Mr. Southers. I can't hear anything. But officers, can you please remove him? He's created a distraction again. Can you just have him? Can you please ask him to remove him? Apologize, Dr. Southers. We'll have this gentleman removed pursuant to item 7 and item 12. He's been warned on multiple occasions for disrupting the meeting. He's continued to disrupt the meeting for not being able to leave this meeting. So can we
This guy is unqualified to serve in that commission role. I know you face
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I apologize, Dr. Southers. Please continue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Southers, thank you so much for being here. And your willingness to serve again on this commission. This is probably the most difficult commissions we have in the city of Los Angeles. It's a bit of an unenviable position that you're in. So I just want to start off by that. The last time you came before this body, I focused a lot on our model of crisis response. That at the time was the issue that was most pertinent and that needed to get a little more traction in the city. After many pilot programs and a lot of discussions and the 2020 uprisings, it felt like the political moment was correct to do that, and I'm very happy to see that move along. I see the CAO's office is here, who's been working on this with you hand in hand. And so I just want to ask you again, regarding UMCR, the unarmed model of crisis response, the rollout of that, what are your thoughts on that rollout? What can be improved? Do you have any, a vision to expand that? Just give us an understanding of your analysis of this program.
Well, Councilman, first, thank you for your support of that program. There's two real issues as it relates to the enhancement and rollout. First item is triaging those calls to make sure we're getting the right people to those calls in a situation or an environment that's safe to them. Unfortunately, that leads to the second problem, which is I spoke to a number of clinicians and folks who are in those programs, and they're having a very difficult time recruiting. And when I ask them, what's the big concern? They say safety. And so although the resources may be available to hire personnel, those types of persons who might be clinicians in environments, or I should say situations like that, are opting to go elsewhere as opposed to being in a organization that responds to police calls for service where they could go out in a safe place and be able to provide the resources people need.
So you say they're citing safety?
They're saying that they don't want to be placed in a situation that may become unsafe. And so, as opposed to perhaps being with an organization that would work in our unarmed response calls, they would opt for another organization where it's perhaps in a hospital, perhaps online, but some other opportunity. And so that's what I've heard from a number of people in those organizations who said it's been hard to recruit and hard to hire.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Even though I believe 90-something% of the calls have not needed police backup, even despite this sort of statistics.
Agreed. And I would love to see us use it more often because, as you know, 90% of those calls may not require an armed person, and a third of those calls involve a person that's suffering from some mental challenges. And so their services and their resources are direly needed.
Okay. As Chief Villanueva, I think he's gone, mentioned that as one of the ways to also help the LAFD redirecting some of those calls. So I hope we can work through some of the challenges that are coming with UMCR. And regarding the sharing of data on these calls, my understanding is that there hasn't been a complete sharing of data. Is there a reason why we're not, showing everything to the CEO as far as data sharing on calls that are not redirected to the UMCR and the outcomes of those calls?
I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, are you willing to, and share information to make the program more successful?
Absolutely. Oh yeah,
Okay.
It's a program that I wholeheartedly endorse.
Okay, thank you. May I, Mr. Chair? Can you keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sometimes, first of all, I appreciate the public coming and speaking. I know, this is the first time I'm hearing a lot of the things that are being said about, that may reflect your character. And so, and this didn't come up at the first time that you were appointed. The one that was the most, there was a couple that were the most unnerving. The first one was a paper that was purportedly co-authored by you, saying signs of Muslimness as a potential characteristic of homegrown violent extremism. And again, we're researching on the fly. We're asking for more information, but there is what appears to be a document that speaks to that. You're also, just to be fair, you're also speaking about white supremacist terrorists in that same line. So I just want to be fair about that, which I believe is the bigger problem in America. It's not people who are so purportedly Muslim. But can you just speak to why did you write that? And can you explain the reason for that?
Well, first, council member, I don't know if I've ever used the term Muslimness in my life. So if you found it there, I didn't write it.
Well, I have it. Let me read it to you. It
Okay.
says, an American who embraces a Muslim identity ideology within the United States is a homegrown violent extremist, and so too is an American who embraces an ideology positing racial superiority, advocating violence.
Okay.
And again, we're trying to get the information, so I'm asking what I have in front of me.
Sure. I testified in front of Congress on the first and only hearing on the Boston Marathon bombings when Tamerlan and Jahar Tsarnaev blew up a device at the marathon. During that testimony, I made it clear that they were American homegrown violent extremists. There was a member of Congress that afternoon who was challenged by that because he wanted me to call them foreign terrorists. And I said both those young men had lived in America for 10 years. In fact, Jahar came here when he was 9 years old. I said, I hardly believe that as a 9-year-old, he came to Boston with the intent to blow up the marathon, which means they were American homegrown violent extremists. They embraced their ideology here, was the reason I said that. That's the clarification on that remark. And that's where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, I covered white or Christian identity extremists in my research, Muslim extremists in my research, which was highly informed by a 6-year project I did in Minneapolis, along with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar before she even ran for city council, who greatly informed my work, as well as Mohammed Ahmed, Omar Jamal, and other really well-known figures in that community because I spent 6 years there. All that work was informed by them. Everything I wrote was edited and or reviewed by them before the report went back to the Department of Homeland Security and before I wrote my book.
Mm-hmm. And it says, so I'm just reading back because it says, an American who embraces a Muslim identity ideology. What do you mean by that? Is it cited in other parts of this testimony?
It's the same as Christian identity, meaning from the extremist part of the religion, which was made clear to me that obviously is not the religion, nor is it the religion of Christianity, when they're embracing an ideology that is not only violent, but one that's extreme. And that's what was meant by Christian identity, Muslim identity, and other various number of identities that I talked about in the research. But that conversation and that testimony reflected back on what I had said at the Boston Marathon bombings, which is why they wanted that comment and clarification, because I was talking about the Sanaya brothers.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And the last sort of string of questions. The other thing I've been sent, or I was sent, is regarding the USC valedictorian Asna Tabassum. What role, or any, did you play in preventing her from speaking at her commencement ceremony?
I wouldn't qualify it as
Well, I
playing
said,
a
if
role
any,
in her
that's what I'm
prevention
saying.
of
Did you
speaking.
play a role, if any?
I'm an associate senior vice president there for safety and risk assurance. I have a number of departments that I'm responsible for, as well as a threat team, a risk management team, the law enforcement component, the fire safety component, environmental health and safety component, and the Officer General Counsel. We put together a risk analysis, provided that to the university, and the university made a decision she was not going to speak.
And so you're assessing. You say you're assessing threat. Part of a team that assesses threats at USC.
That's correct.
So
it was a team.
It was a team. And are you able to share what your opinion was of preventing her from speaking at her ceremony?
No, I'm not.
Okay. It's again, and I also want to let the public know that you have always made yourself accessible when things come up, especially in these really unprecedented moments, which I don't think anybody has. When I mean unprecedented, I'm talking about the federal militarization of our city. I don't think anybody has the recipe for how we fight back against this fascist, corporate fascist white nationalist that's sitting in the White House right now. And we've had private meetings where we're trying to figure out what to do, and I do want to say that publicly and acknowledge that.
Thank you.
But I am disappointed in your not being able to speak about what happened to Asna Tabassum
because there's pending litigation.
Yeah, and I respect that, and I get that. I will speak for myself. I'm in the unfortunate position to try to make a decision on your reappointment with a ton of information getting here, and I think I need to suss out. And so I don't know where I'm going to land on this right now, but I do want to thank the public for coming and bringing these issues to light. A lot was said, but as I mentioned, the two that I found the most unnerving were the one I mentioned regarding regarding your testimony in Congress. I feel I understand why you said what you said, and I'm disappointed that because of litigation, you're unable to speak about Asna Tabassum's
Council member, I have a formal memorandum with the university regarding conflict of interest. And when I am here, I'm a member of the Board of Police Commissioners. When I'm down the road, I'm an associate senior vice president, which is why decisions that were made, even involving the Los Angeles Police Department, I was not involved in at the university because that would have been a conflict. And unfortunately now, because of litigation, there are things that will be presented, as you well know, that I would love to speak to, but unfortunately I cannot speak to those.
No, I understand. I appreciate you saying that, and that's why I said unenviable position, right? You're a commissioner. You want to serve your city. I do believe you want to do what you think is right, and these things come up. But I understand what you're saying.
And Councilmember, if I may, I appreciate your honesty. 2.5 years ago, we had an interesting conversation about the robot dog.
We sure did, yes.
And again, you were honest then. I know you'll do what's best for the city. I only want to do what's best for the city, which is why I serve.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doctor.
All right, colleagues, any other? Sure.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilwoman
Chair. Dr. Suthers, thank you so much for your dedication and your very thoughtful service in the role and your willingness to do it again. This is obviously a really important moment in our city's history and a challenging time with a lot of big opportunities ahead. One of them, of course, is the Olympics. There are other major events coming as well. But with your deep expertise in counterterrorism and mass casualty type events, what is your assessment of our Olympic readiness? And how do you foresee these sort of LA versus DC tensions playing out when it comes to public safety and our preparations for the Olympics?
Well, thank you, Councilmember. Again, thank you for your support. I used to say that I wish that we could take the 15 to 17 days of the Olympics that happen every 4 years and just make them happen all year round, because it's the time when most cities are most safe and most countries are most unified. I'll date myself here. I worked in the Olympics in 1984. I consulted to the Olympics in Beijing. I consulted to the Olympics in Rio in 2016. So I know a fair amount about Olympics. I think we're going to be prepared. I had a meeting this afternoon with Bobbiette Morgan, who is the chief security officer for the Olympics. We're looking at thousands of people, if not 20 to 30,000 people in law enforcement personnel were deployed in Paris. We'll be looking at that when this happens. And we're looking at a record number of athletes that will be participating in the Olympics as well. And so the good news is that here it is 2025. We need to be ready in 2027, and we're ahead of the curve as it relates to planning and strategizing for that event. Our added challenges will be things like transportation, about no cars, about trying to be environmentally responsible in having that event. But I can tell you in Beijing, we had green facilities, we had green cities, and we were able to do it. As it relates to the DC situation, I don't know if I want to look that far ahead. I'm really thinking about tomorrow or next week. I don't know where we're going to be in LA by 2028, but I can say we're working very closely with our state, local, and federal partners. There are about 8 different subcommittees that have been working specifically on security. A number of analyses have already been conducted at locations that will be hosting venues. And as you know, the Olympics are going to go from LA to Oklahoma City. So that's another challenge, is the scope of the geography that we'll have to deal with. So without being evasive on the answer to the question, it's just hard to say what the political climate's going to be. I'm hopeful that we'll stay unified, at least on focusing on what we need to do for the Olympics in terms of logistics, and most importantly, what we're supposed to do for security. This is going to be as I was told this morning, the largest Olympics they've ever had in history.
I'm glad that you have some level of confidence in the readiness in it. I worry about our staffing levels. And I hear you, it's not so much a hiring issue, or it's more of a hiring issue than a recruitment issue. But as we continue to lose pace with hiring to attrition, and as we transition to supplements to our police force, technology or license plate or reader cameras, how can we work with the commission to accelerate the rollout of our real-time crime centers, and what other technology implements might be helpful, not just on the day-to-day that we need it for, but as we are thinking about and preparing for those major world events?
Well, thank you. The Real-Time Crime Center played a huge role in Paris. The other thing that played a significant role was we were impressed with the number of drones they had deployed as first responders, which we would like to do here. So, as you know, you get a call for service, the drone is up, and you can tell dispatch whether it's real or not. And that's been very useful in the United States as it relates to the recent swatting incidents that we've had. So as we go forward, a real-time crime center, which gives us real-time information so we can do analyses as it's happening, as well as the technology associated with drones, would be very, very helpful. Paris did it right. In all the Olympics that I've been associated with and all my colleagues around the world, they all agree that Paris did an outstanding job. If we can at least replicate that and hopefully improve on that, we should have a very successful and safe Olympics.
You have a way bigger geographic footprint.
With a bigger geographic footprint.
To cover. It's going to be a heavy lift, but encouraging to hear. One final quick question, and this really sort of relates to property crimes and quality of life issues. On the west side, repeat burglaries, car break-ins, rampant retail theft. It's just an ever-growing and constant aggravation. So from your perspective as a commissioner, what advice would you give to LAPD command staff and maybe even to us on how we get LAPD to start prioritizing some of those, I think, what are viewed as lower level type crimes that aren't drawing the response that I think constituents want to see?
It goes back to when with programs like CompStat, where we really are looking at data, we're looking at trends and patterns. These things aren't happening by coincidence. They're choosing their targets. They're choosing their victims. If we can look at the patterns and the people that might be involved, it's going to be very helpful. And I think we should deploy our resources based on that information. That's always been most successful in the past. And I think that's something we should probably do more often as we go forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. But what do we do about people who've just given up on even bothering to report it? They are beyond frustrated with the lack of responsiveness, long wait times, and frankly, what appears to be a lack of follow-up, people investigating their crimes and then criminals being held accountable. How do we solve for that piece?
Well, for the people that have given up because of their response times or other issues and don't report, that then misinforms our database. We may think that there are 50 incidents when in fact there were 150.
Right.
And so that's a challenge. One of the things that came up at the West Bureau meeting we had last week was people were saying, we don't know which number to call if it's not an emergency. We don't know what number to call if it's an abandoned car. They said, if we could help you inform the public and make them more educated on what numbers to use, then when we have 911 calls, they won't go unanswered. And they're right on point. So I think we have to take it on, we meaning the Los Angeles Police Department, take it on as an education and awareness campaign so people understand who to call when, and not to call a friend when it's a 911 call, and most importantly, not to go out and video it before you call the police.
I have to constantly remind people, don't report crime on Nextdoor.
Thank you.
There's actually a process for that. One final one, Mr. Chair. We actually heard from a lot of residents today in downtown LA. But I heard from them. I could have been hearing from my constituents on the west side in Venice or Westchester or anywhere else. And I agree with those folks. The downtown is the heartbeat of LA. It is a top destination for tourism. It is the nerve center of business and economy in Los Angeles. What do we say to people that are literally here begging for help? And I've never met any of these folks before. What do we say to them?
Well, I won't speak on behalf of the chief, but I do know the chief reports to us. We're going to make him more aware of this. It doesn't matter what crime stats say if people come here and say they can't walk outside. That says everything it needs to. And so that's something that we'll be talking to him about. We'll have to look and see, is there a deployment issue? Is there a resource issue? Is it a call for service? Can we put specialized units in these areas? We have task forces for everything.
We do.
And so why not? And just step on it until it stops.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that and your willingness to serve. I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Park. Colleagues, any other questions for Dr. Southers? All right. Thank you, Dr. Southers, for being here in committee today. And Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on this item?
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Lee,
Aye.
Councilmember Price, Councilmember McCosker,
Yes.
Councilmember Soto-Martinez,
Mr. Chair, because there's a lot of information I still want to suss through, I'll be registering no vote today.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
4 ayes, 1 no. This item is approved.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Here we go. All right. Officers, can you please identify the people who are disrupting this meeting and ask them to leave pursuant to Council Rule 7 and 12? Okay. All right.